Welcome to this Actus Academy course on why SMART objectives sometimes go wrong. The learning outcomes for this course are helping you to understand some of the common pitfalls associated with SMART objectives, helping you to understand how to differentiate a milestone from an objective, and how you can chunk objectives up or down to ensure that they are achievable and relevant. First of all, let's remind ourselves of what SMART stands for, because after all, most people know the acronym. The reality is that the difficulties arise when people try to apply it or don't really know how to avoid key challenges. Now, the acronym itself is actually really robust and well established in behavioural science. The S stands for specific and also stretching, which I'll refer back to in a moment. The M is hugely important. It's the measure. A is whether or not we think it's achievable. We also think it's key to use it and make sure it's agreed. The R is about relevance, and by relevance we mean relevant to business strategy or goals or your job role. And T is it timed, or does it have a timely element to it, or time bound? Now, I referred to behavioural science earlier, and the relevance of that is that it's been demonstrated that actually having goals increases our motivation and performance. And not only that, a goal that we consider to be stretching but achievable is actually more motivational than a goal that we think is easy. The other thing that's really quite important is about agreeing our goals and making ourselves accountable. Now, this is two-way, because if you're a line manager, this means we need to ensure that the people that we are agreeing or setting goals for also buy into their goals and believe that they're agreed or accountable. That way they get more buy-in and they think that they're achievable, and they are also more likely to be motivated and to deliver against it. So it is way more than an acronym. In order to set a goal, you don't need to necessarily start with the S. Many people say that using the flip of this acronym and making it a MAST acronym, i.e. starting with the measure and running through it, is a better way of doing it. If you want to know more about SMART, you can go and visit our e-learning on how to set SMART objectives. The purpose of this is actually more about understanding how to avoid some of those common pitfalls. So let's start by having a think, and let's look at this particular objective. This objective says, to improve my time management this year, I can do it without help. So this is the objective. My objective is to improve my time management, and I believe I can do this without help. Now, I imagine we're all recognizing that this is not really a SMART objective, but if I to put up the SMART acronym here now, which one part would you say that maybe it does demonstrate? Absolutely right. You could say that it's achievable. To be honest, there's nothing, it's not really specific. It's not specific enough about the time frame. So we really wouldn't say that there's much about this other than the fact that the person believes that they can do it without help. Therefore, in principle, it's achievable. Okay, so we started on a low base. We're going to build from here. How about this next objective? So this person's objective is to reduce their stock levels by 20% over the next 6 months. And the analysis done last month shows that this is possible. So have a think. Do you think this is SMART? Okay, so I have 5 statements here, and you can have a think about what those statements are, whether you agree with them. So the statement is, it isn't really specific about what type of stock. It has got a measure of 20%. The person believes it's achievable. We don't know whether it's business relevant. In fact, we don't know whether it will help or hinder business strategy. And there's no timeline, as it says over the next 6 months, but it hasn't got a deadline. Which two of these statements, however, would you say that this is actually a risky objective that might encourage the wrong behaviours? We have identified that it isn't entirely SMART, but which two aspects of this statement make this a risky objective that might encourage the wrong behaviours? So if you chose S for it isn't specific about what type of stock, and R we don't know whether this will help or hinder, you're absolutely right. We know there's no timeline, so it's not about it being smart here. The reason I wanted to highlight these two aspects of this objective is occasionally you see objectives that might encourage the wrong behaviours. Let's just imagine that we are in a car spares business, and one of the issues of this one is that we don't know what the driver of it is. So let's imagine that the driver is actually to make the business more profitable, and therefore they want to have less money tied up in stock. But what they would need to do is to make sure that the stock that they do have available is the stock that people buy frequently. So if I took this absolutely and I didn't realize that it's about frequency and making sure we keep enough things in stock, I might think, well, the purpose of this objective is to make our stockroom less busy, and the items that fill up our stockroom the most are our tyres. So what I might do is reduce stock levels in tyres by 20%, but the problem with that is that's our fastest moving good, which might mean we have delays and will make us less profitable. So it's an example where certain objectives, unless we definitely understand the business of it and we're very specific, so arguably we needed to be very specific about the type of stock that we would remove here, then it could actually have a bigger issue. You sometimes hear of examples like this when people have talked about KPIs in call centres, and it's often the things that we feel are easy to measure, like the numbers of calls people might carry out, which may drive the wrong behaviours, where you hear of people ringing the speaking clock or their mother. So it's making sure that when we're agreeing this objective, that both parties know specifically what's involved and the purpose of it, because that will help us to ensure that we're not going to identify or reinforce the wrong behaviours. So in essence, the relevance of an objective, the R, is really important for people. So we need to know why that objective is relevant to avoid encouraging the wrong behaviours. Let's work through some more examples. So let's take a look at this objective. What do you think about this? Is this objective smart? Continue to assist testers to debug issues in test tasks. So this is obviously a developer in a software business. So do you think it's smart? What do we think? So is it specific? What issues do we have? No. Does it have a measure? No. Is it achievable? Possibly. Is it relevant? Probably. In software business, and there's no time. So really, it isn't very smart at all, is it? But that isn't the question that I want to ask on this particular objective. The question that I want to ask on this particular objective is, what is the main issue with this objective? So having this as an objective, and this is a real objective that I've seen in businesses, continue to assist testers to debug issues in test tasks. So what is the main issue here? Is the issue that I don't have ownership, I'm assisting testers? Is the issue that it isn't an outcome or objective, it's a process goal or milestone? Is the issue that I might not have the skills to do it? Or is the issue that I have no specifics about what the issues are? Now, any of those could be issues, but what is the main one, the main point that I want to take from here, the main issue with this particular objective? So if you chose that it isn't an outcome or objective, it's a process goal or milestone, you are absolutely right. This is the most common issue that I find when I work with clients on objectives, that they're not actually objectives, they're process goals or milestones, which makes it incredibly hard to work out whether that person has actually achieved it or not. Let's take a look at some common examples of process goals or milestones to see if they are familiar to you. This is an animal charity to increase the number of animals fostered locally this year. You know what? That is a very, very laudable goal. But is it an outcome? No, it's not. It's a process to increase it. What about supporting the development of a business plan to enter new markets? Again, what new markets? What do we want to achieve from entering those new markets? This is purely asking us to support the development of a plan. How will we know when we've achieved it and whether it's a good plan? And what does support mean anyway? Continue to roll out the new performance management process throughout the business. How will we know when we've got there? Okay, maybe everyone's got it throughout the business, but couldn't we make this an outcome? Couldn't this be more measurable when everybody, let's say that 95% of people in the business have logged into the new performance management system or process? They are setting objectives or completing appraisals using it. So continue to, it's a process goal. Encourage more students to attend online lectures this year. Well, no measure yet again. How many's more? How many more? What would be a good number? If I got one more student to attend an online lecture, is that success? Or reduce conflict between manufacturing teams so that we can be more productive. So the clue there is that the goal is actually being more productive, but they're setting it about reducing conflict. How am I going to do that? How will I know when we've achieved it? And what is the real goal of that objective? Can you see how common it is to see objectives that are written like this? But in reality, they are all just process goals, which would make it, if you are going to rate performance against objectives, hold people accountable, pay people against things, it's very difficult to be fair if they have got process goals that have been set. So how do you change it from a process goal into an outcome goal? It's about making sure it's at the right level for the objective. So you need to chunk it up and understand why. So those previous objectives, we needed to know why it was relevant. What were we trying to achieve as a result of setting that process goal? That process goal may well be a very useful milestone. So it's a way of getting there, which is absolutely fine, but it shouldn't be the outcome in its own right because it's not an outcome. So let's revisit our objective, which was continue to assist other testers to debug issues in test tasks. So why did we do that? Well, we did it because we currently have high levels of bugs in our new release of Product X. Therefore, the outcome that we're after is to ensure that system bugs are at 3% or less in all new releases of Product X by the 30th of September 2021. So that's much better, isn't it? That is an outcome. It's got measure in it. I'm talking about all, in fact, it's got two measures in, 3% and all new releases. And we're being specific about the product and we have a timeline. Now, the milestones may well be to meet with other testers to understand what's causing them, benchmark incidents, testing and track monthly. So these are things that we would do along the way to help us deliver that outcome. They would be leading indicators of this outcome. Let's take a look at the other one. So the process goal was to increase the numbers of animals fostered this year compared to last year. Okay, so we have no specifics in here, we have no measures in here to understand what the numbers are currently. So let's say we're talking Hertfordshire, we want to establish a bank of 200 vetted local animal fosterers, and I've put in brackets, currently there's 180 by December 2021. So we've got a number of people, there's some criteria to them being fosterers, and we might have some milestones, which is running a social media campaign. Now let's say I'm the head of that animal centre, I might delegate that social media campaign and make that an outcome for somebody else to do. I might hold fostering open days or set up a fostering referral scheme. Any of these milestones might sit in my objectives, or I might cascade them to people who report into me to help me achieve this overall goal. If they have their objective, they need to know why they're doing it, which is this, but this overall outcome may sit with me or at a higher level. Let's see if you're starting to get it. So, which two of the following goals or objectives here are outcome goals? Develop a plan to build additional revenue streams in Europe by the 31st of December. Oversee the development of new products for customers in America by July 2021. Increase the European market share of Product X to 33% by the 31st of December 2022. Agree a set of KPIs for each business around increased revenue by August. 5. Launch 3 new products to market in Japan by the end of 2022 with more than 1 million in pre-orders. Which two of them are actually outcome goals? So it's number 3 and it's number 5. And the way you can tell that they're outcome goals is because they have a key measure. They're more specific and they have a measure. Now, as it turns out, there are times some of the others are smarter. I'm not actually saying that these are the smartest goals that are up there. Not entirely smart, but they absolutely are outcomes because they are being specific and there's a measure in place. So following on from the making sure an objective is at the right level for the individual, sometimes, as I said on the previous slide, we talked about how you might have a high level goal, which is applied to you as a manager, but you need to delegate it to others, and you might disseminate it or delegate it. So you can do that by chunking it down. And we chunk something down by asking how. So we ask why to chunk up, and we ask how to chunk down. So if I'm a customer services team leader and I've got a responsibility to achieve the company net promoter score of 8.5, I might really not have the control to do that because I'm one of 20 customer services teams, and it's the activity that we all do supporting our customers that's going to impact that score of 8.5. So I might find that a bit demotivational if that's my own objective. However, we could do is say, how can we do that? How do you build up to it? Now, you may decide that I have a net promoter score of 8.5 or more or less for my specific customers, if we're able to measure it. So you could just divide it out that's relevant for my geographic region or my specific demographic. Or it could be that you delegate to me different activities that are within my control, which if we chunk them up, they should result in a net promoter score, which is positive. And examples of that might be to do with ensuring that people answer calls within a certain ring rate. We might need to conduct customer engagement reviews with percentage of the base, or hold focus groups. No, because these have got measures in here. Now, the reality is we can't guarantee that any of these will deliver the net promoter score, but if we're cascading throughout our whole organisation and people are meeting these goals, the odds are, if we've come up with the right objectives for these people, this should be delivering that promoter score. So that's how we're using how. So remember, common issues with SMART as to why it sometimes goes wrong is that people confuse the outcome with the task or action. Often we're not specific enough, we don't have a measure, and we use words like continue to, assist, consider, or monitor. We need to make sure the objective is at the right level for the personal role to be achievable or relevant. We need that measure in place to make sure that it's achievable. And sometimes they're just not clearly understood or agreed, where we haven't involved people in there. So let's have a quick quiz. What is the biggest problem with most SMART goals? They don't have a time frame. They tend to be process goals, not outcomes. They're not agreed, or they're not relevant. Absolutely. The biggest issue that I find when I work with businesses is that people have objectives that are full of process goals rather than outcomes. Quick quiz here, SMART. Of the SMART acronym that we spoke about earlier, which one of the following is incorrect? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, or time-bound? So the answer to this one is relevant for realistic. So the wrong answer is realistic. We believe that if we say an objective is achievable, we've covered off realistic there, and it's more important that we understand why that objective is business relevant or role relevant. It's more important than having two words that mean the same thing. Finally, if you want to chunk an objective up into an outcome, what question do you ask? Where, how, why, who, or when? Of course, I hope you all got that one right. The answer is why. Understanding why is relevant. That brings us to the end of our Actus Academy course on why objectives sometimes go wrong. If you want to watch a similar module, why don't you check out our module Applying the Balanced Scorecard?